Are any of his students here today? Okay, today we're very fortunate to have a speaker that has come many times on many subjects to the museum. It's Mr. Missak Kelechian, and he's an electrical engineer with experience working for key U.S. Department of Defense logistics operations. He is now an independent investigative researcher, passionate about finding untold stories of courageous expressions in service to humanity by the U.S. government, its people, and the Near East organization that became the catalyst for the survival of hundreds of thousands of Armenian victims between 1915 and 1930. Just a quick summary of the presentation today. He's going to talk about, as you can see, Mr. Armin Wegner and his motivations to pursue the Armenian cause from 1915 until his death in 1978. He will address a number of questions, including why did he take the risks of his own life by taking forbidden photos of Armenians? Besides the 24 known Armenian genocide photographs, were there more photographs? Do any of Wagner's books ostensibly burned by the Nazis survive? He will also present for the first time newly uncovered correspondences between Wegner and a German lady who was living in Lebanon and married to an Armenian man. Mr. Kelechian.
It might sound odd for some, but I am dedicating this presentation to my mother-in-law on her 80th birthday that we just celebrated back in January. Without her continuous resilience over the years, we would have not known the mindset of Armin Wegner and his personal thoughts. A German lady, her name Gerda Kunert, is married to late Hagop Topakian in Lebanon. Learned impeccable Armenian, wrote articles in Armenian and researched German archives. Corresponded over 7 years with Armin Wegner, hundreds of letter pages were exchanged, obviously. She knocked on every possible Armenian door to make sure his books are republished in Armenian, and more precisely and importantly, she wanted to resurrect his photo archives, and if need be, to arrange financial assistance to him. My lovely wife, Anita, and her sisters, as they were growing up, Armin Wegner was a typical subject at home. Every day when letters came in back and forward, they shared what's going on and all kinds of other information that are not listed in known books. But most of all, I would like to share with you that she gave me the original letters that Armin Wegner and her corresponded. Hundreds of pages. They're all in German, and some of them have been translated. And she entrusted me with those. Who was Armin Wegner? Born in 1886 in Wuppertal in Germany, upon completing his doctoral studies in law, he joined the armed forces, the German armed forces. German soldier, medic, World War I. He rose to the rank of second lieutenant in German Sanitary Corps, attached to the Ottoman 6th Army. He was serving under Marshal von der Goltz, which was stationed along the Euphrates between Baghdad Railway all the way to Mesopotamia. Wegner witnessed the death marches of Armenians during the height of the Armenian Genocide. Disobeying orders, he gathered information on the massacres, collected documents, annotations, notes, and especially letters by the refugees, and he shared them all the way to in Constantinople with Ambassador Morgenthau and his friend in Germany. he got caught. Obviously, in those days, the cameras were not small. They were huge with tripods and, So he got caught. The Turks betrayed him. And the Ottoman command, at the Ottoman command request, Wegner was arrested and sent to serve in the cholera wards, where he fell seriously ill. Wegner was eventually recalled to Germany. While some of his photographs were confiscated, he did actually smuggle many, many photos under his belt. Over the years, he was a medic, a writer, a poet, a photographer, soldier, eyewitness to the Armenian genocide, but he had a doctorate in law, so he was a lawyer witness. He wasn't just a simple witness. He was a pacifist, human rights activist, farmer, and then lately, at last, he became the righteous among nations. Let's hear it.
I came in Turkey as a member of the German Red Cross, and in this quality I came through the whole desert of Mesopotamia and was a witness of the terrible persecution of the poor Armenian people and saw the terrible sacrifice. A witness is a very difficult task. I could never more forget what I have seen. I was always willing to speak of this terrible scene and to say to the peoples, don't care that not a second time the same terrible scene can repeat. I came in Turkey.
There were about 11 million German soldiers during World War I. Why did this one soldier had a different attitude? Because 3 intellectuals had a strong effect on Armin Wegner. The first one was Angelus Silesius, who was a German Catholic priest. And the motto that captured him was, "The rain does not fall for itself. The sun does not shine for itself. You too are created for others and not for yourself." This was the reason when Armin Wegner joined the medical Red Cross, the German Red Cross medic, and joined the army. The other one, the famous German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, and the motto that he captured from Nietzsche was, "How much truth can a spirit bear? How much truth can a spirit dare?" But most of all, one of the most mottos that he used over the years was from the American poet Walter Whitman. "Resist much and obey little. Because once fully enslaved, no nation, state, city of this earth ever afterward resume its liberty." The eyewitness with a law degree, October 1916, Wegner wrote from Aleppo, "I have taken numerous photographs during the past few days. I was told that Jamal Pasha, the hangman of Syria, imposed death penalty on anyone violating the prohibition on photography inside the Armenian refugee camps. I carried these images of horrors and accusation rolled into a bundle against my stomach." he meant he copied them into his belt and smuggled them out. I have no doubt that I was committing high treason, but I am conscious that perhaps I have been able to assist these poor people even a little. You see why resist much and obey little meant very much to him. He was serving under Field Marshal Walter Gold's team. Actually, after a few months, the marshal died in his hands. He passed away in Wegner's hands. You see how the Germans are organized. Look at the type of clothing that they're wearing. The Red Cross, fully dressed up, and the nuns helping out what is needed on the field. But one would ask, what has really triggered something in Wegner? The connection with the Armenian, where does that come from? Why did the rest of the German troops who were involved in World War I didn't have the same reaction that Armin Wegner did? At 9 years old, Armin Wegner had an experience that undoubtedly influenced his later life and his decisions. His interest was aroused by the bold, big letters of an open newspaper that his father was reading during the Armenian massacres in 1895. He was horrified to read in a German newspaper about a Kurdish butcher who, as a mockery, had hung the corpse of Armenians for sale in his butcher shop. A picture of horror for a little boy, obviously. A picture that pursued him all his life. He began to wonder about this unfamiliar race. Who were those people called Armenian? A name so close to his first name, Armin. Wegner's search for non-violence was initiated because of his mother. She had familiarized him with the ideas against war and pacifism since his childhood. Marie Wegner was an important representative of the early women's and peace movement. His name is Armin T. Wegner. The T was very important to him, the middle name. T corresponded to Theophil, named after his grandmother, Theophilia. Later in life, he related the letter T to the word Tantalus from the Greek mythology because of the agonies in his life. Tantalus was a Greek mythological figure, most famous for his eternal punishment in Tartarus or Tartaros. He was made to stand in a pool of water beneath a fruit tree where the branches were long, but the fruit eluding his grasp, and every time the water always receded before he could reach the fruits. Today, there are 3 collections that we know of Armin Wegner's photo collection. One is in the Armenian National Institute in Washington, D.C. They were donated by his daughter, Sibyl, Wegner's daughter, I mean. The other one is in the Deutsche Literatur Archive in Marbach, Germany. The third one is in the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum. But as my all researches were based on one photo to discover places like Antura, the White House carpet in Khazir, for me was, if I could make discoveries with one photo, what about Wegner's photos? Were there any more than the ones that we already know, 24, actually 26 to 28 photos that are known? He wrote from Aleppo. I just came back from a walk around the camp. Now I am writing these lines. From all sides I was besieged by the screaming, hunger, death, disease, and despair. And the picture you see in a camp. Nevertheless, all this was dwarfed when compared with the horrible scene representing the crowd of orphan children whose number was growing day by day. You see the orphans there in the picture. I rushed out of the camp, and although walking on a flat ground, I felt dizzy, and it seemed like the earth tore in two parts, and an abyss opened under my feet. March 1916, he wrote to his mother, "Can I still live? Do I still have the right to breathe? To make plans for the future which seem so insubstantial, when all about me lies in an abyss filled with the eyes of the dead." In the same letter to his mom, "I have taken numerous photographs on penalty of death. I do not doubt for a moment that I am committing treasonable act, and yet I am inspired by the knowledge that I have helped these poor people in some small way." Obviously, these iconic pictures are known all over the world because of the risk that he took. When we entered the empty inn, we found the desiccated corpse of a 12-year-old boy inside the open door at the side wall. Most likely, he had died of starvation. October 1916, Wegner described his conversation with Reverend Dajat Aslanyan. In a single day, he buried 300 Armenians who had died from spotted fever. During the conversation, Reverend Dajat asked Wegner to take his daughter to save her away from this certain death. And the agony that he was in, but what can I do? I feel so miserable. These are the known iconic pictures, about 26 of them, that are referenced to Wegner. As you can see, mothers with babies on the back, whatever they have, walking for miles and miles, or children who are dying on the streets, and here people carrying on their normal lives. Tents, death, massacres. Looking to find something to eat, grass. Again and again, camps, deportation camps that he visited, he took pictures. Out of his known 28 collection, these are missing. We know about these two because they were published in 1923 in a book in Copenhagen. How much truth can a spirit bear? How much truth can a spirit dare? A courageous request presented by Wegner to the Ministry of Affairs in Germany. He said, "Germany may be released from its accomplice only in case of a sincere and unconditional support for the rights and freedom of Armenia." In 1919, the legal advisor for the Secret Service of Germany, Dr. Otto Goppert, who was in the meantime one of the leaders of the German-Turkish Union, furiously summoned Wegner to his office and strictly ordered him, "Do not intervene in the Armenian matters, not even at the personal level." During 1917 and 1920, after the war, Wegner was in active relationship with Armenian intellectuals, such as Garabet Melik Ohanyan, Hagop Zoryan, Avedik Isahagyan, Libarit Nazarian, and others. Professor scholar Meniko Hanjanian had come to Germany for obtaining higher education then. Hagop Zoryan was executed in 1937 during Stalinist time, repression. Avedik Isahagyan, we all know, he became a famous poet. Libarit Nazarian was an active member of the Tashnak Party. So these four Armenian gentlemen who spoke with Wegner between 1917 and 1920, for sure, Wegner talked to them about his photo collection. For sure, he told them about the experiences at the camp and the misery that he has seen. This is the one on the left, is a typed copy of Wegner himself. He typed in English and he sent it to my mother-in-law in Lebanon. This is the letter which he wrote to the US President Wilson. A testament in the desert, a German eyewitness from the Armenian massacres. We don't have space to read all of them, but just a section. The Armenian people were victims of this war. The voice of the conscience and humanity will never be silenced in me, and therefore I address these words to you. This document is a request, so he was kind of ordering President Wilson because it was part of the 1919, in France and Europe, there for the peace agreement after World War I was lost and the Ottoman Empire lost. I speak in the name of those whose despairing cries I had to hear without being able to still them, whose cruel deaths I could only helplessly mourn, whose bones bestrewed the deserts of the Euphrates, and whose limbs once more became alive in my heart and admonished me to speak. He never stopped speaking about the Armenians. Even during Solomon Tehredian's trial in June 1921, he was one of the witnesses. He actually wrote a book, The Trial of Talat Pasha, where the doctor-in-law Armin Wegner, again a witness with a doctor-in-law, who condemned the Young Turks. And he emphasized in the preface, as a rule, the false necessity of military measures is just an excuse, and the resettlement in the desert, just a worthless prey to veil the bloodiest crime of the present century, the purpose of which is nothing but an assiduous and complete annihilation of a superior race. He didn't stop there. He used writing as a resistance. Wegner is an open letter to Hitler in 1933. And the picture that you see is the receipt of the office. The German paper would publish. No, there was no German paper who would publish his letter. He is the only German intellectual who wrote a letter to Hitler, complaining about what he's doing was wrong to the Jews. I appeal to you to put a stop to all this. I have both the right and the duty. Appeal to you, for my heart is seething with indignation, and I was not endowed with a gift of speech merely to make myself an accomplice by remaining silent. The receipt that you see was acknowledged by the head of the Chancellery, Martin Broman, with the remark that the Führer is going to soon be reading that letter. And instead of an answer, Wegner was arrested. A few days later, Gestapo thugs in Berlin, he would suffer incarceration in 7 Nazi concentration camps and prison before he could make his escape to Italy. He could never again bear to live in Germany and remained in exile for the rest of his long life. He died in Rome in 1978, virtually forgotten by his own people. His obituary gravestone carries the following line in Latin: I love justice and I hated injustice. Therefore, I die in exile. 1933, the Nazis, the university students carried out a series of book burning, a work that's the book burning of works that student and leading Nazi party members associated with un-German spirit. Enthusiastic crowds witnessed the burning of books by Gray, Einstein, Freud, Mann, and even non-Jewish Armin T. Wegner. They burned the books, and Wegner sent his personal books, the ones they burned in Nazi Germany, and some of them, as we can see later here, exposed. These are the books that the Nazis burned, and Wegner sent them to Gerda Topakian. He was so neglected that and forgotten by his own German people as well. After World War II in 1947, a memorial was built for the owners of the vanished books. And Armin T. Wegner was even declared dead in the German Writers' Congress. Here you see Armin's name next to Franz Werfel, who was also, his books were 40 Days of Musadal, obviously. But Wegner was alive. He was in exile, forgotten in Positano and the island of Stromboli and in Rome. Even Armenians forgot him until 1965. Wegner's actions were later acknowledged. He was awarded highest order of merit by the federal German government in 1956. His native city of Wuppertal awarded him the prestigious Edward von der Heydt Prize in 1962. In 1967, he was awarded the title of Righteous Among the Nations by Yad Vashem in Israel. And in 1968, he was awarded the Order of St. Gregory the Illuminator by the Catholicos of all Armenians, Vasken I. Here, the Righteous Among Nation award ceremony in 1967, as he was the only writer in Nazi Germany ever to publicly protest against the persecution of the Jews. Armin Wegner ceremony in the Hall of Remembrance in Yad Vashem. The tree planting ceremony, again in his honor. Armin T. Wegner official visit to Armenia at the invitation of all Armenian Catholicos Vasken I in 1968. Armin Wegner visited Armenia twice in his lifetime. His first visit was in December 1927, following his participation in the festivities in Moscow celebrating the 10th anniversary of the October Revolution. And then he visited Yerevan. What is important for me here, I am sure in 1927, Wegner spoke about his photo collection. He shared his experiences that he had down in Aleppo, in Meskene, in Ras Al Ain, during his trips to the Baghdad Railway. Obviously, in 1968, he was decorated with the Order of St. Gregory the Illuminator. Even a street in Yerevan is called, in his name, after him. But this picture says a lot. He's on his knees in Zizernagapert in 1968. Only God knows what was going through his mind. Only God knows what he thought. The cries of those children, the orphans, the men and women in the deserts of Syria and Mesopotamia, they were calling for him. And in his book, The Expulsion of Mankind, Here they are, crawling wildly in the plain, tied to one another, women and men. The desert has immensely opened its jaws to furiously swallow humans and beasts. How it all started back in 1964. The letter that you see on the left, Catholicos of all Armenians, Vasken Arachin. Letter number 1078, 9 December 1964. He sends a letter to the GBU chairman in Milano, Italy, Mr. Stefan Sarabian. In the letter, he explains Wegner's the collection of 2,000 photos and tasked Antranik Zarugian to write about him in Nairi Weekly. Antranik Zarugian was an influential diasporan Armenian writer, poet, educator, journalist, born in Gurum, Savaz, Ottoman Empire. Among his most prominent works, People Without Childhood, Mangutun Chunetsol Martik, in 1955. In March of 1965, Antranik Zarugian and Stefan Sarabian visit Armin T. Wegner in Rome. As soon as Wegner sees Stefan Sarabian in 1965, where had the Armenian been for the last 50 years? Wegner expresses his dissatisfaction of Armenians, how they have neglected or forgotten him. He was correct, says Sarabian. Wegner explained his dismal financial situation where he could not even travel to go back to his remote village in Germany, where he has hidden his 2,000 Armenian genocide-related photos. Mr. Sarabian was shocked. He emptied the contents of his wallet right away to give to Armin Wegner. During the commemoration of 1965, the 50th anniversary of the Armenian genocide, Nairi, the weekly magazine, issues, for the first time, some of the collection of Armin Wegner. Pictures. For the first time, a long gap, Armin Wegner photos were published. And in Armenian, an article that Wegner wrote, His Sundari Yed. And those pictures that you see on the screen are here in this issue. Was the first time, and also a lot of Nairi issues talking about Wegner, one after the other, and the world knew about his photos. The picture on the left, when he was 1916, and here when they found him, he was 80 years old already. The lady with the mission, Gerda Guner Topakian, my mother-in-law, when Nairi published Armin Wegner's address, she was the first one to write to him. As soon as she reads the story in Nairi, where Wegner's address was published, she starts correspondence with him. At the age of 80, Armin Wegner's situation, and she's describing some of the letters. At the age of 80, Armin Wegner's situation was poor, hungry, and concerned about his unfinished works. And he said, Wegner, day and night I am worried to the extent that I am not able to sleep because I have not finished my Armenian-related works. He wrote to Gerda in one of his letters. He always wanted to sell his 2,000 photo collection. I mean, all my research since 2005 were depending on one single low-resolution photos, and I have unearthed such wonderful material. And here, Armin Wegner with a camera with 2,000 pictures. It is mind-boggling. It really bothers me to speak from here, not knowing what happened to those 2,000 pictures. And I asked my mom, my mother-in-law, how much he was looking for, those 2,000 pictures. She said about $17,000. Maybe a car's price, or two cars then. As I said, at that time when, they met him, he didn't have money to go back to his village, where he hid his photos, first from the Turks, and then from the Nazis. As I showed earlier, some samples of the letters signed and typed by Wegner to Mrs. Gerda, other ones. Gerda was relentless. For 18 years, she never stopped. She wanted to republish his books in Armenian or in readable English, because most of them are in German. And she wanted to buy those photos and to provide some kind of financial aid to Armin Wegner at his old age so he can live in peace. Here she is. She's talking to Alek Manukyan here. Next to him is Reverend Georg Garbisian of the Antillas Brotherhood. Here, ADL Parnak Tolmasyan, Ramgava. Here, talking to Vahevahian, known poet. Here, she's talking to Alek Manukyan's wife. All she was asking to reprint the books, give him some monthly payments so he can live the end of his life in peace. She never stopped. She taught to Choren first, Paroyan, Catholicos of Policy of Silesia. She spoke to Karakin to Sarkisian, Catholicos of Policy of Silesia as well in Antillas, who later became also Catholicos of all Armenian in Armenia. She wrote articles in Armenian. A German lady wrote Armenian articles in the Hask official magazine of Catholicos of Sis in Antillas. She spoke in the ACUSA, the Armenian Church University Student Association, to stand up and ask and follow. In one of the articles, her last article in 1984, in the magazine, the official monthly magazine, Husk, in Antillas, the title, Who was Armin Wegner, and what kind of value his work offered to the Armenians? And she writes, I have been trying to understand Armin Wegner for about 18 years, but I haven't succeeded. Although I have been in correspondence with him for a long time. In the process to arrange financial assistance for Wegner, she applied many venues, many political parties, many congregations, and some of the results she wrote in that article. Alek Manukyan, no. Marian Gulbenkian Foundation, no. AGBU, no, and many other venues. Those are not the only ones. At this point, Gerda, frustrated, she bursts with anger and says, where have the Armenians been all this time? Where has Vasken Behapar been? Why did the Armenians wait so long to reach Armin Wegner? How could they let such a valuable photo collection be neglected? newspaper article from the Le Droit, a Canadian publication, where they were producing a movie using Wegner's photos. The movie called From Hell to Americas. In order to get Armenians interested, she planned to bring Wegner and his wife to Beirut for a presentation through German Goethe Institute. Place and date were all arranged. However, they received a refusal letter from Goethe Institute branch in Rome stating that Armin Wegner was 80 years old and not willing to travel because of his old age. When Gerda forwarded the copy of the letter back to Wegner, he was surprised because nobody called him. Apparently, the pushback, the resistance, was from the Beirut Goethe Institute because Armin Wegner's wife was Jewish, and inviting a Jewish person in the 60s in a country like Lebanon was unacceptable. Later in 1972, Goethe Institute invited Wegner to New York, where he lectured about his books. During his stay in New York, he also met Armenian community members who arranged a photo slide exhibition. He was given a gold pen on one of the receptions where he was honored. When he returned back to Rome, he wrote back to Gerda. Nobody understood his situation. He was hungry and in dire financial state. A golden pen was not the solution for him. You know why? Because he was an honorable man. He could not ask for financial aid. That is why Gerda was interfering and telling everybody. And he wrote to Gerda, "When I willingly helped the Armenians in the camps in 1916, I never thought one day I would ask for financial help from them in return." These were Wegner's words. Look at the names here. People from Vahesetian ARF, Kersam Aharonian, Ramgavar, Hunchakian, some of the individuals that Gerda informed personally about Wegner. Eshmiatzim Vehapar, Catholicosat of Sis Antillas, Tashnak, Ramgavar, Hunchak, Armenian communists, members of Apostolic, Evangelical, Catholic, AGBU, Gulbenkian, academics, journalists, writers. She never stopped telling what they should do. Well, all I can say that this was the failure of Armenian leadership. It is not a good thing to speak about people who are not around. But it has to be done. It has to be done, but someday maybe new generations will learn.
What was the excuse?
After Wegner's death, Gerda didn't even stop. She followed up because her concern were those photos. She wanted to know what happened to them. She wrote to Armin Wegner's second wife. This letter is Irene, asking for the original collection. She said they are in Germany in Marbach Museum. Copies were given to Michael Hagopian. In this card it's written, the box on the left, and then Michael Hagopian of Thousand Oaks and AGBU New York. So she was rest assured that the copies existed and didn't disappear. April 1996, Pietro Kuchukian and Wegner's son, Misha, took the ashes of Armin Wegner to Yerevan, the first righteous person and witness for the Armenians whose ashes have been laid in the wall of remembrance on Zizir Makaber, the hill of the swallows. Armin Wegner was married twice. First time in 1928. He named his daughter Sibyl Anush Wegner in remembrance of those orphan children there. And then he was married to Irene Kowalska. She's a sculptor, and he named his son Misha, middle name Vartan Wegner, born in 1941. Here we have members of the Armenian T. Wegner Society of USA, located in Glendale, who commissioned the production of this statue that you see, of this great German humanist, to be represented on behalf of all Armenians in Wuppertal, Wegner's birthplace, on the occasion of the poet's 120, which was done in 2006. Here we see Maurice Missak Kelechian working with Misha Wegner, Wegner's son, on the sculpture details. Again, the Armenian Wegner Society, which are represented by Dr. Zaven Khachadurian over here and his assistant. In April 2008, they gave Armin Wegner daughter Anush Stevens a unique present for her 85th birthday. As a birthday present, her recovered and meticulously restored Sibyl's birth certificate, origin German, where you see her middle name is Anush. Here a picture, Misha, his son, and Sibyl, basically Anush and Vartan. And again, Wegner wrote to Gerda in Lebanon, I have named my daughter Anush and my son Vartan in memory of thousands of children who had barely opened their eyes only to close them for eternity during the war in the deserts of Mesopotamia. Wegner never stopped talking about Armenians. Berlin in 2016, when the German parliament voted to recognize the 1915 killings of Armenians as genocide, Misha Vartan Wegner said, Armin Wegner cried out in his sleep until his last day, dreaming over and over again about the tragedies he witnessed and those he endured. The images of the Armenian massacres were imprinted in his mind, just as they were in the photographs with which he immortalized the first genocide of the 20th century. Armin Wegner cried out as a German exile who had sought to warn his people not to repeat similar horrors. For this, he was the first interned in a concentration camp, then later exiled and stripped of his dignity. Armin Wegner lost his dignity because he was not recognized from his people, from the Armenians, a source of suffering he never overcame. Remember the Greek mythology, the apple, the tree? He almost was every time want to catch that fruit, and it never happened. But now, because of Berlin in 2006, officially Germany recognized the Armenian genocide, but now his cry has finally found peace, after Germany not only recognized the Armenian genocide, but also admitted its own responsibility, an incredible mea culpa. Misha Wegner, Armin's son, attests. Through his eyes, he retraced the story of a man who witnessed 2 genocides and sought to make known the truth, as his work was censored and his books burned as heretical novels in Nazi Germany, but here they are, here and here, and they have been replicated and copied digitally on the internet. Look at this shoe. Armin Wegner picked this child's shoe from the roadside where Armenians were deported in 1916. He carried this shoe in exile in Germany, in Italy, where he passed away. He kept this shoe during his own lifelong exile. Fortunately, his daughter, Sybil Anush Stevens, donated this shoe to Armin T. Wegner Society in his hometown in Wuppertal in Germany. Sybil is no longer with us, and she's holding the shoe in her palm. Thank you very much.
Questions?
Thank you for the presentation, very, very informative. The list of Armenian leadership that you presented here that refused to help Armin Wegner, was there at all any commentary or rationale or reason offered?
As usual, the refusal was never direct. As Mrs. Gerda was talking to them or informing them, they were very cordial, they were very happy. A German lady was speaking Armenian and they were praising her. They were saying, oh yeah, we're going to take care of it, we're going to look after it, we're putting it into this commission, that commission, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. But later on, they sent letters to Armin Wegner saying that it didn't work out, we couldn't come up this, and Wegner was sending the copies of those letters to Gerda saying, the result of this work is, this is what is happening.
And are you putting this material and all the study you've done or whatever in a book to be published?
Not yet. I have to digest because it's a little bit hard for me because it's all in German. My lovely wife helps me with some of the German, but this is a lot of work because what I'm holding is hundreds and hundreds of letter pages and speaking about this, and I need to compile them, and some of the collection is lost because of the war in Lebanon. They used to live in a war-torn area where their houses was attacked and burned, and some of the archives, those letters were lost there, but fortunately I have about 3 or 4 booklets like this full of, the information, but I need a lot of time to study, digest, and put them all in date terms, timeline and chronological order.
Well, I think the obvious question for me is the 2,000 photographs.
Yes.
They are somewhere, so have they been published yet?
Yes. No, they're not. As I said, out of the 2,000 that Wegner was talking about, we only know now 26 to 28 of them which are the main iconic Armenian genocide photographs that we see in every publication. What has happened is, you got to understand, he went back in 1916, so they were glass plates and all type of lantern photographs. So he hid them in Germany in his summer house. And in 1933, he was exiled. He couldn't go back to Germany. And only in 1965, when the Armenian, Stefan went there, they were able to go back and bring them. I have a letter where Stefan says that because of time, because of material, they were all gone, except 120. That is what the letter says, and I have it here with me. But we've only seen so far about 28 of them, and they are located in these three institutions that I told you about. I am also aware that before Wegner passed away at his old age, he had a maid, a helper who would visit him to help him live and clean and all that stuff. I am aware that an Armenian befriended that lady, and he entered Wegner's house, and he stole some pictures, because he has written that to my in-law. For the last 1.5 years, I know that person. I don't know personally, but through the I know. And I know he has them in a vault. But I'm not sure what he has. Is it the replica of these 28 that are common? But sometimes, you know, people are too egoistic. They take things and they only want to keep them to themselves. Maggie says, pick it up. They pick it because they are not willing to share, because the value of those photographs are there. And this guy, I tried to reach him indirectly because he's not an easy reachable guy.
But what does Michael Hagopian have in the institute near his village? What do they have that's?
I am sure it should be from that collection, and she can help us. She worked with Michael Hagopian, and she can help us. I don't know, but this letter, as I was putting the slide yesterday, Anita helped me out that there was Michael Hagopian names, 1,000 odd, and all that. I need to look.
Okay, so it's totally unresolved at this point in time.
Yeah, it's a continuous effort.
First of all, I want to thank you for your hard work, and I want to take this opportunity personally to invite you to Pasadena City College to present this. I would personally like to thank you also for your hard work. And one person during the presentation asked a question, probably you missed it. He said, what happened to all this Armenian institution and foundation, such as the names that you have?
Right.
Why do you think, in your opinion, they didn't want to help or assist Armin Wegner?
First of all, it was a shock for them starting in 1965, and then followed up. We don't move fast. You need visionary people to understand. You give something like this to Carla Garabedian, she will never sleep to go after it. But unfortunately, at that time, these people, there was no internet, there was no phones, and it was expensive or not interested. Oh yeah, it's another picture. Kidding, yeah, it's a sad thing. But he was a lawyer witness. He was not just any witness. He photographed, he captured that second that it was forbidden. He was punished, he was beaten, he served in cholera wards to make him die. Yes?
If German government recognize and acknowledge the accomplishments of his Armin Wegner.
Yeah, just put I'm not hearing you well.
Yeah, okay. If German government acknowledged and recognized his accomplishments,
Yes.
why did he stay in Rome after 1956, which was the recognition date year, and until end of his life, 1978, he stayed in Rome. He didn't move back to Germany and lived there maybe more peacefully.
You have to understand the psyche and the mental thoughts. This is a fighter man. This against law, treachery. He went in and photographed. He went there. He warned the U.S. President Wilson. He warned Hitler what he was doing, and he says, like you heard him, and he has written that if this has not stopped, it's going to be repeated again. For him, it was a terrible thing to relive back in Germany, where millions of Jews were killed, and the mindset, when World War I stopped, it wasn't an overnight day that the Nazis turned and became democratic German republic as now. It took decades for people to come back. And for him, he's a poet, he's isolated in his world, in his books. I mean, somebody who's at the age of 1980 or 85, not sleeping because he didn't finish the works of Armenian that he intended to write and do. So he lived in it because he was afraid what was going to happen to him.
So it was an emotional issue.
Yes, yes. You have to understand, if you are a witness to such a horrible, genocide, and then the Nazis, and it's not. We're not living like today. There were no movies. There were no TVs. He relived that, and as his son saying, he was reliving those millions and millions of time in his dreams. It was something that he thought over and over again in his whole life.
Missak, first of all, I really appreciate what you have done. You're amazing. Amazing research. Just very, very, very precious moment that I lived here with everything you have explained. I really commend what you have done. My question is, he was a military man.
Medic.
And also a lawyer.
Yes.
Simultaneously, there were also German missionaries during the genocide.
Absolutely.
They also confiscated some pictures.
Right.
And then they have taken it to Germany. Mm-hmm. So, was there any relationship between a military person and then missionaries who were doing the same thing discreetly, secretly? That's my first question. Second, why those missionaries later got all the support they needed to go back to the survivors of the genocide and do some ministries or educational work in Anjar and other places, and Armin was isolated. What do you think was the main reason that both were involved in the same mission, and yet one has been neglected, which hurts me so deeply to see Wegner die in loneliness and isolation while committing his life to the Armenian community at large?
Yes, some of the missionaries that you're talking about, you see them here as nuns, and they have captured some pictures, but you got to understand that it was strictly against the law to use, because the psyche, like today, we're talking about 1915, what does the United States do today with Turkey? With all the proofs, with everything, because they are an ally, because they're a military ally. We have financial deals with them and all that. These human rights and reality is disrespected or forgotten for the sake of military or businesses and all that stuff. And those missionaries that, as you said, they came to Anjar, they came to Lebanon, they followed up, they opened schools and all that. They continued their missionary work. But those pictures, they didn't share because they were afraid of the repercussions. He was summoned by the German secret police. He was beaten. He was taken into 7 different ghettos and prison. He almost lost his life being beaten. Not everybody is courageous like that, knowing that he's doing treason and going. So he had a different mindset, different than the missionaries who wanted to give God's message and so forth, and help the generation of orphans that needed more help to survive. So they consoled their souls. I think they consoled their souls by doing mission. They were helping out those, orphans that they were fatherless and motherless. Those needed help as well.
I just have a quick question. Are there any legal heirs in the family that would have the legal right or standing to sue to retrieve these photos?
From who?
Well, the guy that has them is close by. Somebody who has it nearby.
I usually don't give up easily. I said I'm still working on it. And will see. I won't give up. The problem is that I don't know if they are the same ones. He could have taken the same one that is already publicly known in those, and the effort and energy and money and all this. We offered him that we're going to honor you in Armenia, we're going to give you the whole thing, but not interested. Yes?
Yeah.
Yes.
Rakish, Armenia,
Yes.
the silent film,
Yeah.
1917, 1920. There is relief raising $117 million.
Right.
Why Wegner was ignored?
Location first. They didn't know him. See, my concern was Avidik Isargan and Ohanjanian, who met him in Germany. I am sure they heard him about those pictures. Then in 1927, yes, under Russian communism and all that, Vasken Vehapar must have heard them from Avidik Isargan or Ohanjanian or alike, because they were in an iron curtain. I wish he spoke out and asked way before 1964. The only reason 1964 came up, because Armenian, as you know, the awakening of the recognition or thought about Armenian genocide started in 1965. After 50 years, the gap between when 1915 and 1965, we were mourning, we didn't have houses, orphans, separated, trauma, and all kinds of things. It was in 1965 that it was the first thing. So I would assume that, oh, what kind of pictures we can, have? Ah, wait a minute, there was this guy, where is he? It's like this that it happened. That's what I'm assuming. As I said, somebody like Carla, if she gets a hint, a wind of such a picture or archive existing, she will go and go after it forever. It is very hard. He delivered letters to me recently, because as a German medic, he was able to walk into the camps, get letters, give them. He even went back to Constantinople and gave those letters to Ambassador Morgenthau as well. One more last question, sir.
My question is the following. We know that Adolf Hitler had great admiration for Mustafa Kemal Atatürk.
Yes.
Now you say that Armin Wegner was not led into Germany back in 1933 at the time when the Nazis came to power. Now, considering the fact that Adolf Hitler knew exactly what had happened to the Armenians, to his close associate, von Schoenrichter, who was the consul in Erzurum. Now, why was it the policy of the Nazis against Wegner's memoirs and all that? Why did they why didn't they want
his
to be
books?
German?
Yeah, because he was a non-Jew. He had the guts, the only German intellectual, to write a letter to Hitler saying that what you're doing to the Jews is the wrong thing. So they declared him a heretic. Also, because he visited Moscow, remember in 1927? So up to 1933, Wegner was living in Germany. So in 1927, he visited Moscow, as I said, to celebrate winning of the war and all that. So Hitler looked at him as a communist. Remember, he wanted to attack Russia. So he's an enemy within us. And he declared his books as heretic, and because all the other names, like Einstein and Freud and others, are Jewish intellectuals. Those books, Armin Wegner is a German intellectual, as you will see here later on. Thank you very much.
Two things before you go downstairs. Our reception mat is prepared. If you haven't been here before, there are bones taken from the path of the genocide as they marched through the desert to Deir ez-Zor. Those bones are over there. Secondly, if you saw the picture that he showed of the mother carrying the baby, that inspired my father, Eskijian, to create the sculpture which is downstairs with the mother holding the baby. And the mother is larger than life. And the reason my dad did that was to show that the Armenians would survive. So thank you all for coming to reception.